All right. Hi.
Hey Doug, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for wanting to meet again. It's good. How was your week?
It was good. Busy. Lots of for summer, it's busy.
Yeah.
Teaching a course for the Cobb Institute right now on whitehead and science, and it's a very busy active message board for that. So,
I listened to it. I mean, I'm in that class. I forgot to come on Monday
oh, that's right. Yeah,
there.
I saw your name
Um,
there. That's right.
and a couple of them. There's two Dougs, which I'm always happy to see another fellow Doug, the group.
Yeah, we'll hope you can make it next in 2 days here on
Yeah.
Wednesday. Cool.
Well, I'm excited to jump right on in. And you and I had exchanged a couple of messages on maybe honing down and focusing in on um, metamodern Christianity. I wanted to bring in a particular praxis understanding and see what your thoughts are on that, and also the Jesus Christ event and kind of how that ties in. But also, I'm assuming you're okay with this, looking from the exoteric to the esoteric in that spectrum.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd frame it that way. Uh,
Yay!
So please lead in with that the practice dimension if you want, and then I can
I do
follow up.
have. I put together a little bit of a slideshow. It's not that long, but if it's okay, if I could just begin with that to launch us in.
Sure, should be able to share it.
All right. So before I start with the metamodern praxis, what I wanted to do was pick up a little bit about what we talked about last time, and then bring it not so much of where we were talking about the cosmogenesis of things, but kind of right where um, using the law of three, what had what were the circumstances, the metaphysical cosmic circumstances that allowed for this breaking in consummation with the sub logos, our sun, uh, as well as the earth logos, and we are the cells of the earth logos. Um, Kind of where the we are the earth logos coming from awareness, that spectrum, into consciousness, and we are the ones that create this consciousness happening, but we're not conscious yet because we're not pointing the arrow in the same direction, the compass in the same direction at this point. um, all right, so what we have here is the affirming force is the sub logos, that's the sun, enters into the galactic logos embodied green ray. So the galactic logos is the logos, we call them Milky if you want, Milky Way, this God level, the logos, and its own body, in its own discovery of self, created habits, which become more like enduring objects that structure further complexities in the involution of itself. And so its body becomes the highway through which the sublogos travels. And the sublogos, according to, again, this is esoteric stuff, but according to the raw material, uh, there Earth, the third density is 75,000 years. So that is the master cycle, broken up into three major cycles of 25,000 years. And then there's 12 minor cycles inside of those major cycles. And I know that's similar to other kinds of thinking on this cyclical stuff. What Ross says is that normally, when there is the souls of a particular planet, you might say the cells of a particular Earth or a planetary entity, when they incarnate, they're more homogeneous in terms of where they're coming from, other parts of the galaxy. Um, the normal progress rate, according to Ra, is, or the mean, let's say, would be in the first 25,000 years, there's going to be quite a few that are harvest and use their incarnations efficiently and move them into fourth density readiness. the second 25,000 years, almost the remainder goes, and the third 25,000 year, everybody closes in, and then there's this master harvest into fourth density. The planet itself becomes a fourth density entity. Now, with Earth, we are in this weird thing. So you have the sub logos having moved into fourth density energetics of its galactic logos. The denying force is the Earth logos, which is us in third density. We're not ready for fourth density lessons because we're all over the place. We're different polarities. We're not even, in that where Revelation says, I hope you are hot or cold. If you're not, I'll spit you out. If you're lukewarm, I'll spit you out. This is how I understand this cosmically, is that hot would mean fourth density positive, cold would be fourth density negative, but the unpolarized or not ready yet are spit out, not going to hell, but actually get recycled in other third density planets in somewhere else in the galaxy. So there is no eternal hell. It's just souls get a long time to figure this out. But anyways, the Earth consciousness is not ready. The reconciling force, this created this friction. We've moved into the galactic green ray, which is the heart chakra of the logos. We're inside this now. But our consciousness is not ready for fourth density love. And this allowed for the reconciling force, which is the sub logos, will come face to face with itself, come face to face with the Earth logos. And the new arising from that is twofold. One is on the sub logos side, it's an important stage in cosmic development of a sub logos. And then on the Earth logos side, which is us, it's the insemination of the forgiveness principle right in the heart of Earth, the Earth logos. So it's a new arising that you could say benefits both, even though it's only one cosmos. Okay, so then I want to share, this is something that I came up with. This is based upon my 22 years as a counselor, is that whenever I'm dealing with people in my office, this is connected, so I just want to share why are we so not ready is basically the idea. So this has a lot of import to, I think, what's going on right now, and certainly your work and my work. When I figure out, especially with men, what they're able to express in counseling or outside of the counseling office is we are comfortable with anger. We know how to feel anger. But anger is never the issue. And so the question that becomes is, what are the issues? And is there a way to kind of see that and more systematically? And so my proposition for that is, there is this universal union. The mystery of universal union and unity is all there is. Then on top, so that's God. That's the ground of being. On top of that, we have this veil of forgetting that we are in union with each other, that we are in union with God. And the first sort of primal experience is fear. This is this fundamental perception of being exiled or cut off or separate from source. Of course, you can see the biblical implications here with the Garden of Eden and so on. Then the second layer, I call this, by the way, the primal skin of human suffering. So that there's this, it's like we have an epidermis, a dermis. This is a layer, a 3-layer skin of suffering. That first one is fear. The second one is shame. Borrowing from Brene Brown, the idea that shame is the intense painful feeling of being unworthy of love and belonging. Like that's that sense of shame, and it's been used not maliciously. It's what the tools we've had for humanity to bring in the next generation and shame them into conformity, into our own way of understanding reality. But shame and sadness kind of go hand in hand in this second layer the primal skin of suffering. And then finally, on top of all of that is anger. So whenever I'm walking with men, let's say, and women too, in counseling, when there's anger, I know, and I'm willing to bet that there's shame there, and then underneath that there's fear. So I kind of work backwards with people, especially with men when they're presenting with anger, and it almost always works. But what I wanted to show is when we have this skin, how does it look in terms of where humanity is? So you're familiar with the concept of an eddy in a river? Yeah. So you have a big rock, you've got a river that's flowing, and then the eddy is the circulation in the, I guess, the lee of the rock where it circulates, and there's a certain part where it's a whirlpool and doesn't get out. And I have found this to be a really helpful way to understand where maybe you and I had particular traumas or something happened, even joys, something we can't, moments of awe, joy and awe, terror, early on. They can create these eddies, and then we go on living in other areas and develop, but these eddies will stay here. So if I'm getting triggered, let's say I'm 29 and I get triggered, I'm not 29 who's showing up to deal with that issue. Whatever energetics is being presented to me at that moment is actually, if it's resonant with a pain that I had earlier on, that eddy and that consciousness, that state, that 3-year-old is coming in and actually operating the 29-year-old body, let's say. So you have these eddies, and what is the rock that the eddy starts? Well, this is the fear, the shame, and the anger, these 3 layers. That's the rock that we're not getting through because we're not acknowledging, we don't see it. And the eddy just builds. This is the human collectiveness now. This is the human collective, and we have this huge amount of collectiveness here. Strong bellicosity thought form is what I call it. So it looks like this if we're looking at the chakra system. You've got the lower chakras, the red, the yellow, and then the orange in between. This acts as sort of like a thought form, the great thought form. This is the eddy that we have. And then in between the heart chakra and the lower triad, we have this rock. And that rock, again, is the primal layer of human suffering. It's this, again, fear, shame, and anger. That's the rock. So this is sort of the situation that we're in from our side. And then on the cosmic side, we've already moved into a 4th density environment. So you can sort of feel now this context. And what Ra says is that when they look at us, when they view us, they don't see us as individual entities. They see that too, but they see us as part of the collective planetary organism, the planetary entity as a unit. And they see that we are a green ray planet having moved into green ray energetics, but our consciousness, the humanity consciousness, is an orange ray overlay, because orange is the chakra of self-awareness, or the sense of self. And when it is not balanced and harmonized and understood, then that is the eddy. That is the eddy that has to be resolved in order to move into the green. And the more that we're unwilling to look at ourselves, the more we're scapegoating others, the more that we are feeling the fear and shame and anger and not acknowledging it, the more orange, if you will, our collective energetics is. And right at the center is this of this matrix, this human matrix. The center of that would be the bellicosity thought form that we've created, and that has created us. So if I could take it into a different perspective, it would be as if we have the pyramid as humanity. Then right at the top of the pyramid would be our God, if you will. I think that it can have a personification. I think Satan, I think the veil, in a sense, is sort of Satan in that the veil is sacred, but it accuses us of not belonging. Like that's our experience of the veil, is that we are cut off, even though the veil itself was there for the logos to continue to unfold its development. But from our side, this sense of being cut off and accused of not being one, we call that Satan. And the very thought form that we have created and strengthened over thousands and thousands of years and lived inside of, you almost kind of think that as Lucifer. Now, I make these terms are used in different esoteric ways, but Lucifer obviously actually meaning the light bringer. And what I mean by that is, as painful as this bellicosity thought form is, when we can grapple with it with the kind of integrity that you seem to really try to help us and live out yourself, and myself too, well, that creates the capacity to intensify our consciousness and learn the value of surrender, the power of powerlessness and forgiveness. But it's only because of grappling with this bellicosity thought form. So in a sense, it is Lucifer, both as service to self, but also the light bringer. Okay, this is what I think the Jesus Christ event did, is that the Jesus Christ event allowed for the sublogos, as we talked about last week, the sublogos to come in through a series of, you could call them coincidences of opposites, like two different types of opposites, coming in to form this matrix, this epicenter. And from there, we have the sublogos emerging in, through, and as third density, a planetary entity that was a combination of a lot of different things. And that what I'm thinking of is the Jesus Christ would be, Jesus meaning the particular, Christ meaning the universal, is put together in one embodiment and is an archetype called the Son of Man, which is what Jesus referred to himself. But rather, that archetype is the archetypal human one, the third density being of the entirety of it all, collective, come to one singularity, is Jesus Christ. And then the Jesus Christ event was the whole process of coming through, implanting at the very heart of this bellicosity thought form the seminal seeds of the forgiveness principle, because that is the one thing that actually dissipates the stranglehold of the bellicosity thought form, and then radiates out this forgiveness, green ray forgiveness, that will bring consciousness to this crescendo, and then we're ready for fourth density. I'm almost done with this. So this is what I would see, is the Ankh has been, I think that the Jesus Christ event, as we maybe understand it in Christianity, I think that was the living Ankh. Like that is an Ankh, the archetypal Ankh that you might say is some kind of eternal object. The Ankh as being an eternal object, some sort of symbol of loss and renewal. Concrescence, the dying, the perishing of a concrescence is the resurrection of itself into a larger complexity. Like all of that is come down to one symbol, and that is the Ankh. But the Jesus Christ event took the eternal object of the Ankh and then brought it in and through and activated and planted it in the very heart of third density, which then releases the capacity for us to put on the forgiveness seed and attempt to bring in novel ways to understand bellicosity that isn't scapegoating, that isn't denying, that isn't trying to control it through aggression, but rather this hard balance of love and wisdom. I love you and I'm setting boundaries. All of that is this coincidence of opposites is sort of come into that is our living out of this seed, but it was planted there. And yeah, so that's what I wanted to share with you before I got into like the praxis. But what are your thoughts? I mean, does it make sense, or push back if you'd like, or add?
Well, thanks, Doug. I would like to take a step back and just offer my sense of the metaphysical presuppositions of the sort of approach that you're taking, which I think is very important. Just to maybe welcome people along with us, because
Oh yeah.
I think we jumped into the esoteric deep end very quickly in both of our conversations. Um, I'm not as familiar with the raw material as you are, but I think in having, studied ancient and more contemporary esoteric systems, there are some general themes that I think are really important. Um, I mean, one is just the basic sort of Platonic idea that the sense worlds that we perceive with our physical sense organs is, I wouldn't go so far as to say an illusion, but it becomes an illusion or Maya when we think that it's the only thing that's real rather than a sort of symbol of or expression of what is real. And so we can read what the physical senses show us as a kind of script. And I think that's in some sense what you're doing in speaking of the relationship between the different levels of logos from the galaxy to the sun, to the earth. And so we physically see these forms in the physical sense world, but I think some people in our modern scientific age would want to stop there, um, and say that what we feel inside as human beings, whether that's uh, emotions like fear and shame and sadness and anger, um, or love, that these are epiphenomenal things. That they're part of our subjectivity. We shouldn't think of the universe writ large as in any way as if uh, our emotional process is in any way relevant to what the galaxy is doing. But I think the sorts of esoteric perspectives you and I are interested in saying, what we're really saying is that there's an emotional ontology at work here, and that these deep structures of our own experience are, in some sense, the interpretive key for understanding what nature is doing. Our own sense of will, for example, um, at least in the anthroposophic way of thinking about it, the will is the most unconscious part of our soul. We're basically asleep in our will.
It's instinct. Yeah.
It's instinct. And
Mm-hmm.
I think in the sense of the Trinity, we're there's a will that our own will bottoms out into the will of nature. And I think the source of mass and gravity and the image that you're using for like the center of that bellicose emotional thought form is, I believe it's the way that it's one of these animations or models of how stars form, right? With gas collecting, orbiting the center of gravity. And that's very much an expression to me of the unconscious will. Um, and so, you know, I think these esoteric perspectives are inviting us to see, yes, the universe as an evolutionary process, a developmental process, but that in Whitehead's terms, it's not bifurcated. So
Mm-hmm.
that our own inner psychospiritual experience of these emotional states is intimately wed to the forms of self-organization that we can see with our physical senses out here in the world, whether that's whirlpools or eddies in a stream, or galaxies, spiral galaxies in the cosmos writ large. Uh, these patterns of organization are expressions of a deeper psycho-spiritual unfolding. Um, and this, how does this come to be veiled from us? This connection of the within and the without, or the below and the above, I think is
Yeah.
the big question. Um, it, because, you know, in the Genesis story, um, in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve initially don't seem to even be capable of fear. There's nothing to fear. I mean, it's the Garden of Eden, and then God introduces this um, this rule that don't eat from that tree. Um, Now, is that the introduction of fear, or does that not happen until, because Eve doesn't seem afraid even after God says that, still is curious to go
Oh,
eat.
there is fear and trembling when they're eating the apple, but then all of a sudden God is coming into the thing, and then there's this trembling, and then there's shame, and then they kind of blame each other. Well, then you've got Cain and Abel sort of process that into the anger too later on.
So, the question I'm kind of exploring here is, when does the fear first begin? It doesn't seem to begin when God gives the rule, don't eat from the tree. It seems to happen
No,
when God catches Eve and Adam eating from the tree. That's when the fear, their response to God's anger, or
well, the way I understand it, and this is the myth, the archetypal myth. The way I would understand it is uh, when Adam and Eve partake of the apple, that would be um, the installation, if you will, of this veil of forgetting. Now, there's a cosmic metaphysical reason for that that doesn't have to do with third density, but rather has to do with like two orders higher of its own, like God at that level. So there, the installation of the veil of forgetting in third density was a novel concept that went through a process from inchoate thought into activation and experience, refining until what Ross says is that our particular experience here on this planet, and also the concentric circles in the galaxy that are in this bandwidth of where we are at, all the way around, because it goes out concentrically, the lessons, that this is the most articulated, intense, this is the cutting edge of the creator's own self-knowledge, is what's happening right here, in our intensity. And so with Eve, when she eats that, and they're all happy, what's happening metaphysically is that there is, in their conscious mind and subconscious, now has a veil to where they are automatically viewing life from the ethos of separation, but they don't know it yet until the ethos of wholeness, which is God walking in the garden. So you have the wholeness, the luminosity of wholeness coming in, and then you have the ethos of separation, which is the third density veiled experience, where even metaphysically we're all one, but now there is a bifurcation of experience of reality. And when that wholeness comes here, you can see that the incredibly bright light next to a shadow is scary, because the shadow, when the bright light gets closer, the shadow gets, sucked into it, if you will.
yeah, I guess I'm doing a bit of a Jungian psychoanalysis thing here on Yahweh in this Genesis story of the Garden of Eden, because it seems to me that Eve, even after God says, eat from any tree but not that one, there's still a certain naivete. Like, Adam and Eve don't even know there could be such a thing as evil. They don't know that this serpent could deceive them. They think everything in the garden is good. Okay, God says don't eat from this tree, but they don't yet have a sense of um, evil until after eating, and then God's reaction to that. And so it's as if, because God created Adam and Eve and the garden, and presumably uh, the serpent. And so there's something, yeah, as Jung would say, there seems to be something unconscious already in uh, this primal will, which perhaps is why this creation happens at all.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
because there's still the growth. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the growth process underway here is not just human beings growing back to God. God is involved in the process.
Oh, God is grow. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a constant torus field. We're growing, and God is growing, and that thing in the middle is the creative advance.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
and there are dialectical stages or phases of this process
that's right.
of coevolution, and the Christ event seems to be uh, a pivotal moment of sort of interfusion between the earthly and um, the cosmic, let's say, between
Yeah.
the logos and its and the human as a kind of womb for that, for the logos itself to grow, and by
Isn't
becoming
that the
flesh.
paradox? I mean, the logos creates us, and yet we are the creators of the logos. It's gorgeous, but it's tiers. So the what Rob would say is that higher the next tier of order of being processed above us and is not polarity in terms of right and wrong, good and bad, but rather the polarity of the moved and the moving. It's a constant. It's the process itself, but how the process unfolds is through consciousness, and the way consciousness evolves is the sub and sub and the sub levels. Actually, that is the process of these higher orders to learn about itself. So we are, in a sense, God's sense organs, and to the degree that we start to learn about this whole nature of wholeness inside the illusion or Maya of separation, which is holy. It's not a bad thing. It's a holy thing, because that is the very apex of the entirety of God's evolution, is us grappling with all of the limits that Whitehead talked about, the paradoxes. That, I mean, that right there is the nexus of God's own sense of God's self, macro.
Yeah, and yeah, just the final reflection I would have before you can go on and talk about the practice dimension of this is that the shift in chakras from the solar plexus basically to the heart, um, with Christ as our primary locus of identity as human beings, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the challenge right now.
Yeah.
Because this the that primal sense of ego that we would locate in the solar plexus, that's all about staying alive, protecting all the lower chakras, really
Mm-hmm.
protecting oneself,
Yeah.
one's family. And Christ comes and says, only those who hate their family can follow me. I mean, that's a manner of speaking about how you have to universalize this love and not be so stuck in your blood bonds that your sense of love for those in your group is predicated upon a sense of othering or enemies outside your group.
Yeah.
That's a that's a subhuman form of love still,
Mm-hmm. That's right.
right? And to shift into the heart chakra is to sacrifice something, and it requires a great deal of forgiveness at the level of forgiving God, I guess, for creating a situation where we have to die to our small selves
That's right.
uh, in order to partake in this Christic salvific um, resurrection. It's not for me, it's for the earth, in a sense. It's for this greater being that we ourselves within. And I think that's it's hard for the solar plexus level of ourselves, like our small ego selves, to accept that, oh, I have to give up myself for this. Like, why would I do that?
It
Because we
is a
don't have
death,
any
isn't
sense
it?
of
I mean, it
anything
is,
bigger.
you're on the
Yeah.
cross. You're on the cross in that moment, and it's all the only what I tell people, especially when I do energy work, is there's a membrane in between the lower triad, an energetic membrane between the lower triad and the heart. And the only way to pierce this triad, this womb, this is the only way to get into, to be born into the heart, is to actually will our surrender, to will our vulnerability. And that is the exact area where even really tough people, with really, really well honed defense mechanisms, have had times in their life where they exercised a muscle of surrender in some way, so we can bring that out, enlarge it, and then implant it on whatever circumstance or contrast that they're feeling. But that's the entryway into the heart, is to see things, myself, to see you, to see the world from a 360 view. So what I try to do is picture people inside the center of a massive room, and on the walls, like a green room, and on the walls are, if I'm mad at somebody, I see that person as a little kid. Every single day of their life, they're in a 360 view, they're all the way around to right where they're at right now. And I can see how they got to where it happens, what was their background, what were their experiences, all the way to the present moment. And then in that moment, when I forgive them, which is the heart chakra, when I forgive them, for in this sense means beforehand, like I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And giving, what are we giving? Well, I think we give each other the dignity of being God. I think we give each other the dignity of being the one infinite creator, having a human experience and not knowing it. Like, this is a gift. It's a new big bang of mercy, grace, blessing, now it's hard to do, but that is the power, the contrast between the death of the ego, the affirming force of the ego, and then what is required. And when I can die on my cross there, it opens me up into the resurrection, mythic or archetypally, of giving you, me, Trump, Biden, everybody, the capacity to say we are all God having this experience in solidarity.
Yeah, beautiful. So yeah, why don't please explain this last slide and share.
The last slide is, there's no more slides after this, but I wanted to share with you, because I think you seem to do this, and I think you seem to do this through your own videos and how you engage with people. But this is actually a perennial praxis, and so this is how I came up with this. I'm a constant seeker. I'm always trying to teach as well. This is part of my neuroses, I think. But when somebody goes through therapy and they emerge from that, however long it takes, as a transformed person, the question I would have is, are there predictable steps where they go through to transformation? What occurred that allowed them to be there? Again, if someone is entering into a religious tradition and they emerge in that experience as new people, as transformed people, metanoia, this constant opening up of the heart mind, are there steps? And can it be seen in a perennial tradition kind of way? Well, when I look at all of the psychological techniques that I've ever learned, plus my own little way to do stuff, I see that there is a pattern. Now, this is just my version. It's not a very sophisticated one. It's simple, but it's not easy. And each one of these can be unpacked for, book length probably. But start with the middle. So the whole thing is called the ship's approach. So, and I'll add here, I believe that this is a metamodern praxis. I think it's also a metamodern Christian praxis. I don't see a difference there, because whether it's metamodern, or maybe I'd like to say metamodern with incarnated metamodern praxis, that's Christianity. It's an embodiment. It's the here and now. It's what do we do with the concepts? Okay, we start in the middle. And when I spell out the ship's approach, the I usually put it as an exclamation point, because I want to draw attention that that's where you start. That's the mast of a ship. And it stands for interviewing, or sharing of views in terms of like interfaith dialogue, or enter the view of the other. That's the most important thing, and it's a skill set, but we have to learn how to enter the view. We have to desire to enter the view of the other and learn how to enter the view of the other. Because the only way that I'm going to be able to cultivate solidarity and hope and all these other things is the capacity on which I can know myself well enough to put my filters here, semi-permeable, so I can enter into the energetics and see through empathy what it's like to be the other person, and how you get there and how you facilitate that relationship. That is a skill set, but that's the most important piece. Enter the view. So the first tether that's tied from that mast to the front of the ship, holding up a sail, is S, and that is for solidarity. So when anybody I've ever worked with has emerged feeling transformed, it is because there has been a solidarity happening. That person, and it's always my goal at the very first session, is when they leave, they feel heard, they feel well met. And I see that in you. You know, you talk, you know a lot more than most, but you talk a lot less than most when you have these kinds of interviews. And but there's a sense that you have a real capacity to say, I'm in this with you. That's the energetics that I see that you try to do. It's certainly what I try to do. And it's bolstered by the psychological research that has studied resiliency, that if, say, an inner city kid who's had a really tough upbringing, if they have a only 10-minute connection of we're talking rooted depth here with somebody who's living in this enlarged Christ consciousness, but just 10 minutes of connecting with them in a sense of like, I see you there, I'm with you, I see your false self, I love you anyways, I see your true self, come on, you know, all of that. If you can do that in 10 minutes, that is enough to change the trajectory of their life. And that's been studied. So that's solidarity. We're all in this together. We're accompanying each other. It's the road to Emmaus, arm in arm, heading towards, the concrescence of hope, which is joy, over there in the future. Now, when I can connect with someone, I'm interested in finding out what gives them hope. What gives them hope? And the two things that I use for hope in this sense, as I'm understanding H. So I have SH. Hope is again the anticipation of a future joy. So if we're talking about concrescence and satisfaction, the superject is the consummation and gestalt. We call that joy, satisfaction. Hope would be taking place in the subjectivity, where there's this interplay. I actually call this third between the mental pole and the physical pole. I call it the significant self. I don't know if Whitehead may even have a better way, but the significant self for me is the self that's putting it together. And it's significant in that it's important and that it makes meaning, as in significance. So the significant self is that dance, but it's a nexus of energy that becomes a singularity that negotiates the mental and the physical subjectivity. And then that is where hope is, right there. So hope is planted inside of contrast. Wherever there's contrast, the ground of being right there, that's where hope is. And my job in doing the ship's approach is to cultivate, to water the seeds that are always there. Even if someone says, I don't feel any hope here, but because I know that the law of three, the metaphysical law of three here, I know that buried in the soil of this crux, this contrast, is always hope. And so what I'll tell people is like, well, I know you don't have hope, and that's okay, but I'm carrying it for you until you're ready, to water it. I'll water it for you. And I'm doing that because of my solidarity, which I've already established, So hope is helping a person grow according to their values and their goals. So using interview again, entering their view, I use a technique to try to unearth from the subconscious, which is just between the conscious level and the unconscious. The subconscious is like the bobs that maybe bob up and down in an iceberg, whereas the top part is the conscious and the part, the way below, is the unconscious. The subconscious, that's where our values that we've lived all our life from, and it's also the measurement that we usually judge ourselves or judge others, whether affirmatively or negatively. There's a technique that I use, a couple of them, to bring up from the subconscious to the conscious what are some primary first values of somebody. And then once that is done, I help them articulate 2 or 3 goals that they have between now and the next time I see them. Or, if it's a friend, like, hey, let's check in next week or something like that. 2 or 3 goals. And the goal here is to help them feel a sense of empowerment through their goals, use the lens of their values as measurement on their behavior. So if I want to be generous and my goal is to have a better relationship, like if I value generosity and my goal is to have a better relationship with my father, then even if I'm angry with him for probably good reasons, can I measure my behavior just before I behave? Can I measure my intent before behavior? Before actualizing an intention, can I measure it against the backdrop of my goal, my value of generosity, and then choose a behavior that's in congruence so that I'm living into my goal of a better relationship? Yeah. And that's how that hope that was seminal is now, it's concressing, moving more towards joy at the end of this concrescence. Right. Okay, so that's hope. And then P for process is to understand how it all is in process. The God is in process, you're in process, I'm in process. And we can give this to people that we're working with as it's okay, man. It's okay to not have to get this shit right away. The contrast is holy. And in fact, when we don't have to feel like we have 10,000 pounds of I gotta get this right, but rather sit back and realize it's a beautiful, if you will, game. And I don't mean to trivialize that, but through learning process, for the ship's approach, a practitioner, in my opinion, is this development of holy indifference. Holy indifference. That is really hard to do. But the way I understand holy indifference would be the combination of the blue chakra, that is communication, authentic, whole, honest communication of a balanced and harmonized lower 4 chakras, communicating, incarnating my sense of love. That's the green ray. And when I can do that, I can be an activist in whatever I choose. I can be very passionate. But at the same time, my identity, that lower chakra, is not attached to it. Because at this point, I only want to be an instrument of God, of love. Like St. Francis, make me a channel of your peace. And so that is holy indifference. And then lastly is I ask people, based in psychological research, I ask people, what can you do between now and the next time we see each other that is an act of loving service higher than the transactional energy, or the energy of transaction? In other words, I'm going to do this, but I expect you to do that. It's something higher than that. Because service, incarnating the service, actually plants our own future transformation. Like that's where the seed there is planted, is when we incarnate all that we've gone through planet into the immediacy of our present moment with somebody else, and then that pivots us to a larger metanoia. So, anyways, that's kind of the ship's approach in a nutshell. What are your thoughts? I'd be happy to push back or any holding and open or whatever.
I mean, it's such a, and I don't know if this is intentional or if it's just ended up this way, but an application of the process of concrescence to the therapeutic encounter and
That's right.
how you support people. All the phases of concrescence are represented here, and richly um, the phenomenology of concrescence is just richly unpacked. And I think, um, yeah, I mean, there's so many parallels that some of which you already mentioned between solidarity, hope, process, and service in how Whitehead would describe the production of an actual occasion of experience. But I think there's an interesting, what you're saying about trusting the process and how, personhood is our attempt to be people of integrity, souls that have a sense of wholeness to them is an ongoing project. We we have to learn how to do that, and we fail. We need to fail in order to learn. And so just in the same way, when Whitehead talks about the concrescence of an actual occasion, there's something um, almost divinely foreordained about that process. Like, it will occur,
Yeah,
satisfaction will be achieved, some degree of it at least. And there are higher and lower grades, but that concrescence will take many and fuse them into one and bring forth some new value. It's going to happen.
that's
And
right.
so moment by moment, we have this sort of divine grace that helps us. But personhood is this enduring sort of complex, and our souls from a process relational point of view are historical roots of these occasions. And we're trying to develop the strength, the capacity, the love and consciousness um, to have that historical root, that chain of occasions that we are really be forged into um, something whole, something that's as whole as each of these individual occasions are. But God can't do that for us in the way that, God assures every concrescence reaches satisfaction. Our soul is something trying to birth itself at another level, and we need each other's help for that. Um, souls are always in relationship to one another and in relationship to themselves, to our own past, right? And so we have to learn to forgive each other. We have to learn to forgive ourselves. Um, and so much of that forgiveness comes from the service dimension of what you're describing, where, as Krishna says to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, like, basically non-attachment. Don't be attached to the fruits of your action. Um, it's a gift. You're being of service just as a pure gift, just in the way that, every actual occasion, as it reaches its satisfaction and it perishes and becomes objectively immortal, everything it's achieved wasn't actually for itself. Or you
Mm-mm.
could say it was both for itself but for others. As soon as it's achieved, it's a gift. And we're already experiencing, you talk about interview as the core of this, and I was almost thinking maybe it's intraview, just so that there really is an entering into and a
Yeah,
sharing of that same view. It's not two views sort of interfacing. I mean, we are distinct beings, but
yeah,
um, we're already in the process of concrescence. Every subject is already also subject, which is to say,
yes,
our knowingness of the aim that we are attempting to achieve is already a kind of self-transcendence. We're already beyond ourselves into the future. We're already perceiving, in a sense, the fruit of the action we're taking in the
and
present.
right there, that would be the seeds of hope that are planted
Mhm.
in the crux. Oh, and then already knowing what is the outcome, especially if we've done it many times, we've died and risen many times. We understand that liminal space is that fertile soil, and that joy, which is the satisfaction, hope come to its crescendo, is already present and lures us there. Yeah, you're right.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, so just the forgiveness and the way that you're telling us to trust the process is like, personhood is always an ongoing project. It's not a once and done kind of thing. Um, we have many chances because the process of creativity and creative advance will continue. We're rising, we're being born and dying moment by moment by moment by moment.
Mhm.
Reincarnation is a self-evident
Now,
fact about what's happening in the course of
yeah.
our lives now.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's a concrescent, isn't it? I mean, every quanta that's concressing is dying and rising. It's a reincarnation every
Yeah.
moment.
So it's just a matter of leveling that up
Yeah.
from being able to perceive that process of concrescence moment by moment in the course of your life between birth and death, and then recognizing the larger cycles within cycles within cycles of this, our
Yeah.
embeddedness within this earth process, and recognizing that Christ, the incarnation, is both a matter of it is personal salvation, but only by being willing to give yourself to the whole of humanity, which is really the whole of the earth community.
Right.
um, and so I feel like, and maybe this is to shift gears a little bit, um, to talk about the different ways in which Christianity is understood.
Hmm.
It's been really personalized, um, which is inevitable on some level, but um, it- evangelical Christians and born again Christians, they have a personal relationship to Jesus, and they feel that Jesus has saved their souls. And it seems to me that there might be there's a kind of arrested development there. It's like, yes, Jesus saves you, but that's um you're getting off a little easy with that one, because there's still this larger um species level transformation that needs to occur that you need to be part of. And I suppose if that being born again leads one into service, and not just you know professing a certain kind of belief that is supposed to be enough to get you to heaven, and uh if it leads you into service, then you know great, that's the way, that's the truth. But if it's just a identity or a sort of brand that one wears, that I've got this guy, this big dude in the sky that's got my back, and you know whose team are you on? That seems to me to be largely how this religion is functioning. And I think what you're talking about, and what I'm talking about, and what the metamodern Christian community uh, is trying to articulate would be something beyond that kind of um, sense of identity, and beyond even a religion.
Oh
That
yeah.
this is more about it's a psycho-spiritual process of development, and it's a cosmological evolutionary unfolding, and not just about um, individuals feeling empowered by their egos, feeling empowered and made safe by some kind of idea of a savior.
Yeah. Oh, I love what you're saying, and I totally agree. I feel that the Jesus Christ event, the way it saves us in a sense, is that in addition to planting, say, that seminal forgiveness principle, it created the capacity to learn about if I could say it this way, learn about philosophy, or learn about the perennial tradition, not through concepts but through relationality. Uh, that one can be in relationship to a particular, which is um, a distilled and accessible uh, singularity that is also the universal. So Christ is universal. Jesus would be a particular, and having a relationship with this dynamic of particular and universal in a person for humans in third density is helpful, but I don't think it's necessary. I think that it's the salvific work is actually going to be ushered in by humanity becoming Jesus Christ through relating to each other at these green level, the green ray, the heart chakras, teaching each other forgiveness. But I also think that Jesus saves us, if you will, by revealing that there is no such thing as death. Death is only a transition, and we, on one hand, we should have seen that earlier on, since everything dies and rises. But humans, because we have this capacity for self-awareness plus the veil, we can't see the larger picture, that we think death is in some ways it. So there's I think Jesus revealed the full pattern of the concressing God right in the middle of our own concrescence, and like shows us the way towards the consummation, the whole, this superject at the end of third density, like showed us that this is the superject, and brings the superject and sort of installs it right where the significant self is, as a humanity trying to make sense between the mental collective pole and the physical collective pole. Installs the end right here, and then it sort of spreads epicenter out that way. But what I want to say is, most of religions, the epicenter might have been some form of new non-dual consciousness at higher levels, some break-in of wholeness coming in a concrete particularity. But the way that humans, because we have been entrapped in our own bellicosity thought form, we create these institutions in the image and spirit of the bellicosity thought form. So even in, let's say, evangelical Christianity, and I'm Catholic, so we've got it there, of course, there too. This whole idea of a meritocracy, the ego possession of a saved occasion, and all of this other stuff. And I could be the greatest evangelical Christian or Catholic, go to mass every day, serve people, so on and so forth. Never care about the environment, never understand poverty, never understand that the Jesus Christ event was a movement of the ship's approach of solidarity, radical rooted solidarity in the heart, never understanding that. And by the end of my life, I could have lived, checked off all the boxes, and still be within inside the ethos of the bellicosity thought form, never having touched the heart, because it would require dying to all that I think is good given to me by external institutions. Would require me dying to all of that to emerge through an experience of somebody else giving me mercy, love, forgiveness, all of this stuff. If I don't have that, I can be a great Christian, a great American, whatever, but never move beyond the bellicosity energetics that inside of which the institutions were created.
Yeah, beautiful. A lot of that reminds me of Whitehead's account of the evolution of religion, where it starts very much as collective effervescence of shared emotion and ritual, which is gradually refined into symbols and beliefs, dogmas, and he thinks gradually rationalized, which for him means that it's brought into coherence with thought, that these emotions are brought into coherence with our thinking, and he wants to say that in our time, and really since the axial age, religion has been, as he puts it, what an individual does with their solitude. Initially, but there's also another side to religion, which is what he calls, he's borrowing from Josiah Royce, actually, world loyalty, which is kind of like solidarity. So there's the solitude side of it, and then there's the solidarity side of it. And with like world loyalty for Whitehead, is a shift beyond what I was talking about earlier is this kind of where your locus of value is very much dependent on an in-group out-group split. You're not loving your enemies, you're loving yourself and your family, and that love is sort of it's like the mama bear effect. It's like
Mhm.
there's a very fine line between that kind of familial love, blood bond based love, and the um, violent, destructive, rage in protecting them to destroy anything that might, attempt to harm you or your loved ones. To shift from that to world loyalty is what we're being called to do, which isn't
Yes.
necessarily in conflict. It's sort of a yes and. Um, and so Whitehead describes this shift. I want to quote these lines, and I've shared this
Yeah.
in the Metamodern Spirituality Facebook group, but he says, and again, this is religion in the making. He says, the new and almost profane concept of the goodness of God replaces the older emphasis on the will of God. In a communal religion, you study the will of God in order that he may preserve you because you're afraid of it and you want to propitiate it. You want to be on its good side.
Mhm.
Uh, whereas in a purified religion, rationalized under the influence of the world concept or of world loyalty, you study God's goodness in order to be like God.
Mm.
It's the difference between the enemy you conciliate and the companion whom you imitate.
Mm. That's what the Ra says towards the end of the material, says the adept. So the adept is somebody who goes beyond the harvestability to fourth density, green ray. An adept would be somebody who is really activating the sixth chakra and doing subtle work and all these kinds of things. Anyways, the adept becomes that which it always has been, the creator. Or another place, the adept becomes more and more humble. The greatest adept is the most transparent and humble, meaning that our sense of ourself doesn't go away. It simply becomes we allow a congruence to happen, so some kind of harmony with this greater will coming through and in us and out into the third density world, a total crystallized channel. This is becoming the one, in the way that I think we become like God, but I would say we become God as an avatar of sorts here. Yeah. Oh, I lost your
There we
sorry, I
go.
lost. Yeah.
Yeah, imitate would mean um yeah, I mean to be made in the image and likeness of the divine, and then to consciously recognize that and
Yeah.
decide to live it out, is not just uh yeah, likeness in the sense of pretend to be
Mm-hmm.
divine, but to actually take responsibility for our role in uh creation, as co-creators.
You
And
just said
so
something psychologically important. I'm hearing you distinguish between image and likeness.
mhm.
Uh, could you say more about this? Is I also believe this, but I'd love to hear how you say this, or how do you understand that distinction?
So to say that the human being is like the imago Dei is, I think, a participatory fact in that, it's not about trying to uh, create a copy of the divine, um, whereas likeness seems to me to be more like, yeah, we want to be able to compare ourselves to God and align uh, something separate with its source. And I think Imago Dei suggests, uh, if we think of imagination itself, divine imagination, as a kind of groundless ground, um, for the human being to be Imago Dei is, uh, it's more of a direct, um, we are a direct expression of and a microcosmic recapitulation of that
Amen.
divine imagination rather
Yeah.
than a than a mirror reflection of it, or a
Some
something
kind of
separate.
lesser form.
Right. Yeah. We are that in its own process of evolution.
Perfectly said. Yeah. I love that, what you're saying. I frame it a little differently, um, but it's not in competition with what you said. But the way that I would understand it, and I'm borrowing from Richard Rohr and some other teachers of mine, but that is, the image of God is our absolute divine nature. It is you and me. We are God here, having an experience of being you and me in third density. For our own capacity to learn of our nature, but also God's capacity to learn in, through, and as us. It's all this dance. Yeah, that's the image of God. The likeness of God is our capacity to grow into our own image. So image is an a priori gift, and then the likeness is in our control as we choose our polarity of ethics, negative polarity or positive polarity, in third density, the veiled, and then orient our behavior towards the chosen polarity. That is moving into the likeness of God. So oftentimes that helps me to be remain humble, because man, I get so angry. I'm sure you do too. This is the constant way that we learn self-awareness, isn't it? But if I see somebody, it's easier now than it was 10 years ago, but my first thing is to register a contrast in how I feel about them, their behavior. The second thing is, so I register it, I feel that inside me. I allow myself to become conscious of that there is a tension inside of me. The second thing I do is I forgive them in the way that I'm giving them beforehand and myself grace that we're both God trying to figure this shit out, but it's a holy shit, if I could say it that way. You'll find that in the DSM-5, holy shit. But anyways, it's a gift. So I'm forgiving both of us for the wonderful mess that we are. But then it's to realize that they are God, I am God, and our likenesses may be different, not better, not worse, maybe more developed, maybe less developed. That's that trusting the process, It's okay. We're all going to get there. But it won't be the same. It won't be a uniform getting there. It'll be a unity, diversity maintained and protected by love. That's unity. It'll be a way to get there that is the same path, but its own unique diamond, if you will. But so the image is the omega point that we get to choose through lifetimes, but the alpha is that's the likeness is our omega point, but the image is our alpha. That's kind of how I understand it. I don't know. It makes sense.
Yeah, that works. So I do need to run in a minute here.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
I wonder, is there any closing thoughts you might like to offer that would round out what we've shared in the last hour?
There are, and that's to pivot and say to you and to anybody who's listening here is one of the reasons I tried to introduce you. I don't know if you and Brian McLaren got to connect or not, but I wanted to connect with you guys and because what I'm seeing that you're doing, I came up with a ship's approach prior to learning about Whitehead. But when I saw the way that you communicate and share, but you're also very vulnerable. I mean, it's not like I've seen all your videos. I'm a fan, not a stalker here, Matt. But I see you as a fellow worker in the field. But the way that you have chosen your own integrity is to admit very openly that it's a glorious mess and you're trying to figure it out. And so I think you offer your wisdom and gifts, like you have gifts and wisdom, but you're offering it in the spirit of solidarity. Like I really see that. And you have corrected people with this idea of Whitehead that everything is moving towards a convergence. This is that hope. you really do hold on to hope. Like I see you holding on to hope, and this is where you're going to go down on the map. Not this is where you would go and wrestle.
Mhm.
Is the idea that there is hope no matter what. And certainly you talk about process. And I think giving yourself in your videos is your act of service. I think in a future conversation, I would love to hear more about what your ideas would be. This is my approach to the ship's approach, but maybe how do you see metamodern Christianity or metamodern, being able to incarnate these thoughts and then making a difference in the immediacy of people's lives, for people who may not be interested in philosophy? Because I know that's in your heart, and I've heard you talk that way. So I would love to maybe have a dialogue about that.
Mm. Yeah, that sounds important and valuable to really explore how these ideas can matter to people in people's lives. And yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, and I think I do recognize myself in your what you're sharing there, but I also think the kind of hope that I hold on to is it's got to be beyond death in a sense. Like, we're all going to die. Everyone we love is going to die. And so if you can still have hope in the larger process, despite that fact, and you're not turning away from or spiritually bypassing the fact that we all get old and sick and we die, then there's hope.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing
To pay the
yeah,
price for that hope.
yeah, yeah, and just recognize what comes along with being alive as just the other side of the coin,
There you
and
go.
the nature of polarity, and that what we're here to do, because there's just a lot of it's misplaced concreteness on the spiritual level, thinking that whether you're Christian or some kind of transhumanist, that the goal here is immortality. I want to live forever, and I want everyone I love to live forever. It's like, okay, well, maybe in a manner of speaking, as this larger part of this larger evolutionary project, we're objectively immortal, but
Yeah.
it's not the ego you
It's
want
right.
to
It's
take
not
with
the
you. So
doveness or the matness. Yeah.
yeah, so there's hope, and it's depending on what one means by hope. Um, I might in some conversations want to really drill. I not I wouldn't want to traumatize somebody, but if I feel some attachment to the idea of the little self being immortal, then I would probably counsel. I would suggest that's hopeless.
Hmm.
um, and so just to qualify a little bit what you're saying, which
Yeah.
um, I think there's a place for um, really harsh reality checks. I have there's a teacher of mine, Buddhist professor of Buddhist studies at CIS named Stephen Goodman. He passed away several years ago, but I'll never forget a workshop that I took with him that was on death and the trickster, as the Tibetan Buddhist tradition has understood it, the trickster archetype. And he just started the class by having us do an exercise, like choose a partner, and take turns just looking each other in the eyes and saying, it is absolutely certain that you will die
Mm.
one day. And we each had to say that to each other. And it's an obvious fact, but but to really have someone say it directly to you and to take it in, it's consciousness altering, and it's disturbing. And it should be, because it really calls us to account for the way that we're living, and makes us reflect on um, the values that are important to us. And
That, in
so
fact, that's exactly how that was the technique I used to get people to find their values,
mm,
is to imagine they're dead and at their funeral, and that they're a spirit being able to fly, and hear a circle of loved ones talking only good things about them. What would be three things that you really hope they say about you? and then help them find that out.
That's what I say. Death is the end of life. Death is the purpose of life in a sense that you find the purpose of your life by viewing it through your death.
Yeah.
And so rather than death being a morbid thing, it's the archetypal eye through which we can see ourselves most truly,
Yeah, I
nakedly.
think it's the access point where we can live well and live better too,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then it's part of the spiritual strength that comes by having a relationship with Christ that enables us, I think, to look at death in this way
Hmm.
without fear,
That's right. Or
as the
shame or anger.
or
Yeah.
shame or anger.
Bellicosity. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, lots more to talk about there, but
Well, thank you. Well, let's maybe in the future we could connect again. But I'll come on Tuesday or Wednesday, and thanks for all you do.
great. Yeah, thanks, Doug. Likewise. And yeah, we'll be in touch. We'll do a part 3 here. But
Awesome.
see you
Take care.
Wednesday to talk Whitehead.
All right. Bye.
Bye.